At 11:47 p.m. on October 24, 1942, Private First Class Anthony Casamento crouched in a shell crater 40 yards from Japanese machine gun positions on Guadalcanal. The 20-year-old from Bronx, New York, had been in combat exactly 11 days. 0 confirmed kills. His platoon had lost 14 men in the past 72 hours to coordinated Japanese night attacks. Casamento carried something his officers had called a waste of time. A homemade grenade assembled from a tin can of sea rations, blasting caps from demolition supplies, and TNT scraped from defective artillery shells. Captain Morris had seen it 2 days earlier and said, "That thing will blow your hand off before it kills anything." But standard Mark II fragmentation grenades had a 4-second fuse. In dense jungle at night, that was 3 seconds too long. Japanese infantry heard the metallic clink, counted to 3, threw grenades back. 7 Marines had been killed by their own grenades in the past week. Casamento's tin can grenade had a 2-second fuse, maybe less. He'd cut the fuse himself with wire cutters, estimating by feel because he couldn't see well enough in his foxhole to measure precisely. Around him in the darkness, 40 Marines from 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, held a 200-yard defensive line. Behind them, Henderson Field, the only operational airstrip within 800 miles. If Japanese forces overran the field, they'd cut off air support for the entire Guadalcanal campaign. Intelligence reports indicated 2,000 Japanese infantry massing for night assault. The Marines had 40 men, no artillery support, and ammunition for perhaps 90 minutes of sustained fighting. At 11:51 p.m., Japanese Type 92 machine guns opened fire. The problem nobody wanted to solve. For 3 months, Marines on Guadalcanal had been dying to the same problem. Japanese night infantry tactics relied on speed, noise, and chaos. Soldiers screamed, threw grenades, rushed positions before defenders could react. Standard Marine doctrine: hold fire until targets identified, throw grenades at confirmed positions, maintain defensive line. But at night, in jungle terrain, Marines couldn't see targets until Japanese were 15 to 20 feet away. By then, too late. Mark II fragmentation grenades had effective kill radius of 15 feet and casualty radius of 50 feet. 4-second fuse gave defenders time to throw, take cover, survive blast. But 4 seconds also gave Japanese infantry time to hear metallic sound of grenade striking ground. Identify direction. Pick up grenade. Throw back at Marines. Marine Corps training manual said problem was Marines throwing grenades poorly. Ensure proper arc and distance to prevent enemy retrieval. Marines who'd watched their grenades thrown back at them knew better. Problem wasn't throwing technique. Problem was fuse timing. Private Casamento had mentioned this to Captain Morris on October 22nd. Morris had responded, "If Marine Corps wanted shorter fuses, they'd issue shorter fuses. Your job is to throw grenades, as issued, not redesign ordnance." Past 6 weeks on Guadalcanal, 47 Marines killed by grenades. Of those, medical examiner identified 11 as killed by American Mark II grenades based on fragmentation patterns. Nobody could prove they'd been thrown back by Japanese, but Marines knew. Casamento had another problem. He was left-handed. Marine Corps trained all recruits to throw grenades. Right-handed standardized technique for consistent range and accuracy. But Casamento couldn't throw right-handed with enough force to clear 25 yards. His right shoulder had been injured in football accident, age 16. Never healed properly. Could shoot rifle fine. Couldn't throw. Training instructor at Camp Elliott had told him, "You better learn to shoot straight, because you won't last one night attack without grenades." Casamento had scored expert rifleman on qualification range, but rifle ammunition was rationed. Marines on Guadalcanal averaged 120 rounds per man. In a sustained night attack, Marines could burn through that in 20 minutes. The modification nobody approved. October 20th, 1942, 4 days before the night that would change everything. Casamento was eating rations in his foxhole. Tin can of ham and lima beans. Marines called it ham, and motherfuckers universally hated, but calories were calories. He finished eating, started to bury empty can. like regulations required, then stopped. Can was 4 inches tall, 3 inches diameter, thick steel, heavy gauge to survive shipping and storage in tropical climate. Casamento had grown up in Bronx during Depression. His father worked demolition touring down old buildings. Young Anthony had watched him prepare charges, cut fuses, time explosions. He looked at the tin can, then at Mark II grenade on his belt. Mark II grenade, cast iron body, serrated exterior to create fragments, central tube containing fuse and detonator, surrounded by TNT. The tin can could hold TNT, could hold blasting cap, could hold shorter fuse. Casamento asked Sergeant Mitchell if any damaged grenades were available. Mitchell said, "Why? Want to see if I can make something work better for left-handed throwing." Mitchell knew about Casamento's shoulder. Supply tent has some duds. Ones with faulty fuses. They're supposed to be destroyed, but demolition team hasn't gotten to them yet. Casamento found 7 Mark II grenades marked for destruction. Fuses had been removed, but TNT filling and fragmentation bodies were intact. He also found demolition supplies, blasting caps, fuse cord, electrical tape. Working in his foxhole after dark, couldn't risk doing this in daylight, where officers might see Casamento carefully disassembled 1 defective grenade. Scraped out TNT, filling with bayonet. Slow, careful work. TNT was stable, but any metal-on-metal spark near blasting cap could detonate. Packed TNT into tin can, approximately 3 ounces, half the amount in standard Mark II. Inserted blasting cap into TNT. Blasting cap had wire leads that needed to be protected from moisture. Cut 4-inch length of fuse cord. Standard Mark II used 4.5-second fuse. Casamento estimated his 4-inch piece would burn approximately 2 seconds, maybe less. Attached fuse to blasting cap. Sealed connection with electrical tape to keep moisture out. Crimped tin can lid closed. Hammered it flat with rock to ensure tight seal. He made 6 more over the next 2 nights. Sergeant Mitchell saw them October 23rd. "What the hell are those?" Casamento explained modification. Shorter fuse to prevent Japanese from throwing back. Lighter weight for easier left-handed throwing. Mitchell examined one. "Did you get authorization for this?" "No, Sergeant." "You know if one of these goes off in your hand, you're dead. If it fails to detonate, and Japanese find American ordnance components in a tin can, they'll know we're jury-rigging equipment. Could be court-martialed for unauthorized modification of military ordnance." "Yes, Sergeant." Mitchell was quiet for 11 seconds. "Then, I watched Private Chen die 2 nights ago, because Japanese threw his own grenade back at him. If there's something that prevents that, I don't care what regulations say." He handed grenade back to Casamento. "You test these?" "Not yet. Can't test without detonating, and can't detonate without authorization." "Then you better hope they work when you need them. Don't tell Captain Maurice. Don't tell anyone else. If they fail, both of us face charges." The night attack. October 24th, 11:47 p.m. Japanese 29th Infantry Regiment had been planning this attack for 6 days. Intelligence from captured Marines indicated weak point in American defensive line near Henderson Field's southern perimeter. The plan, 2,000 infantry in 3 waves. First wave would draw Marine fire, deplete ammunition. Second wave would hit when Marines were reloading. Third wave would overrun positions and secure airfield. Colonel Farumia commanded the assault. His orders to company commanders: advance rapidly. Use grenades liberally. Marines cannot sustain defensive fire in darkness. Once their initial ammunition is depleted, they will break. At 11:51 p.m., Japanese Type 92 machine guns opened fire from positions 200 yards north of Marine line. Standard Japanese tactic: suppress defensive positions with machine gun fire. Advance infantry under covering fire. Marines returned fire. M1 Garand's Browning automatic rifles, 1.30 caliber machine gun position. Casamento was positioned in shell crater with 2 other Marines, Private Lewis and Private Yoshida. Lewis carried M1 Garand with 80 rounds. Yoshida had Browning automatic rifle with 160 rounds in 4 magazines. Casamento had M1 Garand with 120 rounds and 7 tin can grenades on his belt. The crater was 6 feet in diameter, 4 feet deep. Provided decent cover from machine gun fire, but no overhead protection from grenades. At 11:54 p.m., Japanese machine gun fire stopped. "Here they come," Lewis said. In darkness 50 yards ahead, rustling branches breaking. Boots on wet ground, then screaming. High-pitched battle cries. Japanese infantry charged. Casamento couldn't see them yet. Jungle was too dense, night too dark. But sound gave position, 40 yards. Closing fast. "Hold fire," Sergeant Mitchell called from position 15 yards to left. 35 yards. Casamento could hear individual voices now. Commanders shouting orders in Japanese. 30 yards. He saw movement. Shadows darker than surrounding darkness. "Fire," Mitchell shouted. Marines opened up. Garands barking. Yoshida's bar rattling. Filoto bursts. Japanese infantry scattered. Some dropped. Others dove behind trees, logs, rocks. Then grenades came. Casamento heard metallic clinking. 4 grenades landed within 20 feet of crater. Standard Mark II fragmentation grenades. Japanese had picked them up from dead Marines over past weeks. 4 seconds, Lewis and Yoshida pressed flat against crater bottom. Casamento covered his head. 4 grenades exploded. Fragments whistled overhead. Dirt and shrapnel rained down. None of the 3 Marines were hit. Crater provided just enough cover. But now Japanese knew exactly where they were. More grenades came. 5, 6, 8. Casamento grabbed one of his tin can grenades. "What are you doing?" Lewis shouted. Casamento pulled makeshift pingers, a bent nail wrapped in tape. Lit fuse with cigarette lighter. Fuse sparked, hissing. He threw left-handed grenade, arced 25 yards. Hit ground near cluster of Japanese infantry. 2 seconds. Grenade detonated. Different sound than Mark II, sharper. Crack, less bass. Irregular fragmentation pattern from tin cans. Steel body tore through foliage. 2 Japanese soldiers screamed. "Holy shit," Yoshida said. More grenades came from Japanese positions. Casamento lit second tin can grenade, through 28 yards this time. Detonated before Japanese could react. Another scream. The advantage wasn't just the shorter fuse, it was the unpredictability. Japanese infantry were trained to count for seconds when they heard grenade hit ground. At 3 seconds, relocate. At 4, grenade explodes where they used to be. But Casamento's grenades exploded at 2 seconds. Japanese couldn't adapt fast enough. 3rd, grenade. 4th, 5th. Each one detonated before Japanese could take cover or throw back. Casamento's crater became focal point of defensive line. Japanese infantry, trying to flank other positions, got pinned by grenades from unexpected angle. At 12:07 a.m., Japanese first wave pulled back. 16 minutes of sustained combat. Lewis had 31 rounds left. Yoshida had 67. Casamento had 43 rounds, and 2 tin can grenades remaining. "Reload," Mitchell called. Second wave coming. Marines scrambled for ammunition. Each man had been issued 120 rounds, some shared with others who'd burned through faster. Casamento had no more grenades. His 7 tin can grenades were gone. He looked around crater, found 3 Mark II grenades Japanese throws that hadn't detonated. He examined them in darkness, fingers feeling for damage. 2 seemed intact. 3rd had damaged fuse assembly. He tucked the 2 good ones into belt. Then he looked at damaged one. Fuse was bent, detonator loose. Unusable ASS, but TNT filling was intact. Casamento pulled out his bayonet. "What are you doing?" Lewis asked. "Making more grenades." Lewis watched as Casamento scraped TNT from damaged Mark II into empty Saracen can. Packed it carefully. Added blasting cap from his demolition supplies. Cut fresh 4-inch fuse. Yoshida found another empty Saracen can. "Make me one." They worked fast. 3 minutes to assemble 1 tin can grenade. Japanese second wave would come any minute. Casamento made 2 more grenades. Yoshida made 1, using Casamento's supplies. Lewis stood watch. At 12:14 a.m., Japanese machine guns opened fire again. Second wave. This time, Japanese commanders had adjusted tactics. Instead of direct frontal assault, they sent infantry in smaller groups from multiple angles. Harder to defend against. Marines had to split fire. Casamento's position took fire from 3 directions: north, northwest, northeast. Perhaps 40 Japanese infantry total, advancing in groups of 5 to 8 soldiers. Lewis fired controlled bursts. Yoshida conserved ammunition, firing 3 to 4 round bursts instead of full auto. Grenades came from 2 positions simultaneously. 6 grenades, 3 from each direction. Casamento grabbed tin can grenade, lit fuse, threw toward northern position. 2 seconds. Detonation. Second grenade, toward northwest position. 2 seconds. Detonation. Then problem. No more grenades. Japanese still advancing from northeast. Casamento heard metallic clink. Grenade landed 8 feet from crater. 4 seconds. He lunged, grabbed grenade, threw it back. Grenade was in air for approximately 2 seconds before it exploded 25 yards away from crater. Close enough that fragments struck trees around them. But nobody in crater was hit. Casamento had thrown Japanese grenade back with exactly enough time to clear danger zone before 4-second fuse expired. How did you know how much time was left? Lewis shouted. Counted. More grenades came. Casamento threw back to more. Both exploded safely away from crater. But this couldn't continue. Eventually, timing would fail. Eventually, he'd miscount by half-second, and grenade would explode in his hand. Japanese infantry from northeast position advanced to 20 yards. Close enough, Casamento could see individual soldiers in darkness. He fired M1 Garand, 8 rounds in clip. Hit 2 soldiers. Others scattered. Then heard distinctive sound. Bamboo tubes scraping against metal. Japanese knee mortar type 89 grenade discharger. Mortar could lob grenades up to 700 yards. Marines had no counter for indirect fire. First mortar round hit 30 yards behind crater. Second hit 25 yards to left. Japanese were bracketing the position. Third round would land directly on crater. Casamento made decision. We're moving, he said. Mitchell didn't order withdrawal, Lewis said. We stay here, we're dead. Third mortar round hit exactly where crater had been, 3 seconds after they'd moved. New position, fallen log, 40 yards south of crater, behind Marine defensive line. Not authorized position, not part of defensive plan, but alive. From here, Casamento had different angle on Japanese infantry. They were focused on crater they thought Marines still occupied. Exposed to fire from south, Casamento fired controlled shots. Dropped 3 Japanese soldiers before they realized threat direction had changed. Yoshida set up bar on log. Fired bursts into Japanese positions. Lewis found for mark to grenades dropped by Marines who'd been killed earlier in attack. Casamento examined them. 3 intact, 1 damaged. He scraped TNT from damaged grenade into Saracen can. Made another tin can grenade. This pattern continued for next 30 minutes. Japanese attacked. Marines defended. Casamento made grenades from damaged ordnance and empty food cans. At 12:47 a.m., Japanese third wave committed to assault. This was the main push, approximately 800 infantry, supported by 4 machine gun positions and 2 knee mortars. Marine defensive line was down to 31 men. Ammunition critically low. No artillery support. American howitzers were out of range. No reinforcements. Nearest Marine unit was 3 miles away. Couldn't reach position in time. If Japanese broke through this line, they'd reach Henderson Field. Sergeant Mitchell called orders: fix bayonets, hold the line. Marines fixed bayonets. When ammunition ran out, it would be close combat. Casamento had 19 rounds left. 3 tin can grenades. 2 Mark II grenades. Japanese infantry charged from 4 directions simultaneously. Marines fired. Grenades flew both ways. Casamento threw tin can grenade. Toward nearest group. Detonation. 2 Japanese soldiers down. Japanese grenade landed in Casamento's position. He threw it back. It exploded mid-air. Second, tin can grenade. Thrown at machine gun position. Grenade landed directly on Type 92 machine gun. Detonated. Machine gun silenced. 3 crew members down. Casamento's ammunition, 11 rounds. Third, tin can grenade. Thrown at advancing infantry. 5 soldiers scattered. To hit by fragments. 0 tin can grenades remaining. Japanese were now at 15 yards. Casamento fired remaining 11 rounds. Every shot aimed, controlled. Dropped 4 Japanese soldiers. Magazine empty. Rifle useless. He grabbed marked a grenade. Lit fuse, 4-second timer. This was the standard grenade everyone said worked fine. He counted 1001, 1002, 1003. At 3 seconds, he threw. Grenade exploded 1 second later, 30 yards away. Too far. Japanese had already moved. The problem was obvious now. 4 seconds was too long. In 3 seconds, infantry could move 15 to 20 feet. By the time grenade exploded, targets had relocated. But Casamento had no more tin can grenades. He saw Lewis go down. Japanese grenade had exploded 10 feet from his position. Lewis was alive but wounded, shrapnel in left leg and abdomen. Yoshida's bar clicked empty. He transitioned to sidearm 1911 pistol, 7 rounds. Japanese infantry at 10 yards, now. Casamento drew his own M1911. 7 rounds plus 1 in chamber, 8 shots. He fired methodically. Each round counted. At 10 yards, pistol accuracy was good enough. 4 Japanese soldiers dropped. 4 rounds remaining. Then he saw something that changed everything. Japanese soldier, 12 yards away, preparing to throw grenade. But soldier wasn't throwing yet. Was pulling pin, waiting for others to coordinate simultaneous throw. Casamento shot him. Soldier dropped. Grenade fell from his hand. Pin was pulled. Fuse was lit. 4-second fuse. But grenade was lying on ground, in middle of advancing Japanese infantry. For 1 second, Japanese soldiers didn't realize what had happened. For second, they saw grenade at their feet. For third, second, they tried to scatter. For fourth, second, grenade detonated. 6 Japanese soldiers were within kill radius. All 6 went down. Casamento understood. He didn't need to throw grenades. He needed to make Japanese drop their own grenades. He fired at Japanese soldier, preparing to throw. Soldier dropped. Grenade fell. Detonated among Japanese infantry. 3 rounds left in pistol. He fired at another grenade thrower. Soldier dropped. Grenade fell. Detonated. 2 rounds left. He fired at third grenade thrower. Missed. Soldier threw grenade toward Marine position. Standard 4-second throw. But now grenade was in mid-air, with 3 seconds of fuse left. Casamento tracked grenade's arc. Saw where it would land. Ran toward impact point. Grenade hit ground. He grabbed it before it could bounce. Threw it back at Japanese. Grenade was in air for 1 second. Exploded among Japanese infantry on second bounce. 1 round left in pistol. Japanese infantry were now at 8 yards. Close enough for bayonet charge. But they weren't charging. They were pulling back. At 1:04 a.m. Japanese assault stopped. Silence. For 11 seconds, nobody moved. Then Sergeant Mitchell called, "Sound off." Marines began calling out their status. 18 responded. 13 didn't. From 40 Marines who'd started the defense at 11:51 p.m., 18 remained combative. But Japanese attack had stopped. Henderson Field was secure. Casamento slumped against log, hands shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline crash. Yoshida crawled over. "How many did you get?" Casamento didn't know. Hadn't counted during fight. Had been focused on surviving next 10 seconds, then next 10, then next. But Sergeant Mitchell had been watching from different position. Had observed Casamento's sector, throughout engagement. Mitchell approached at 1:07 a.m. Casamento. I counted your kills. You got 23 Japanese infantry tonight. 14 from grenades. 6 from rifle fire. 3 from making them drop their own grenades. 23 confirmed kills. From a Marine who'd had 0 kills 12 hours earlier. From a left-handed private who couldn't throw regulation grenades effectively. From someone who'd made weapons from Saracen cans and defective ordnance. That tin can grenade you made, Mitchell said. It worked. What nobody reported. October 25, 1942. Morning, after the battle. Captain Morris toured defensive positions, counted bodies, assessed damage. He found Casamento's tin can grenades fragments scattered around Japanese casualties. Maurice examined one unexploded example that had failed to detonate. Saw the improvised construction. Saracen can, shortened fuse, scraped TNT. He called Casamento over. Did you make these? Yes, sir. I told you that thing would blow your hand off. It didn't, sir. Morris looked at the carnage around Casamento's fighting position. 23 Japanese dead. Most killed by fragmentation wounds, consistent with close-range grenade explosions. How many Japanese did you kill last night? Sergeant Mitchell counted, 23, sir. Maurice was quiet for 18 seconds. Then, battalion commander will want to know how one private killed 23 enemy infantry in one engagement. What should I tell him? Tell him I used grenades, sir. What kind of grenades? Casamento understood what Morris was asking. If Morris reported unauthorized modification of military ordnance, Casamento would face court-martial. Even if the modification had worked, even if it had saved lives, regulations were clear. Do not modify military equipment without authorization. Mark II grenades, sir, standard issue. Morris nodded slowly. That's what I'll report, standard issue, grenades. You just threw them better than anyone else. Yes, sir. Morris walked away, stopped after 5 steps, turned back. How short was the fuse on those tin can grenades? Approximately 2 seconds, sir. And you think that's why Japanese couldn't throw them back? Yes, sir. 4-second fuse gives them 3 seconds to grab and throw. 2-second fuse gives them 1 second. Not enough time. Maurice thought about this. If you were going to recommend a modification to standard grenades, what would you say? Reduce fuse length to 2.5 seconds, sir. Short enough to prevent throwback, but long enough for safe handling. That's a good recommendation, Private. I'll pass it up the chain of command, but I won't mention where the idea came from. Understood? Yes, sir. What official reports said. Captain Morris's after-action report, filed October 26, 1942. Night of the 24th to the 25th of October. Japanese forces conducted coordinated assault on defensive positions near Henderson Field. Estimated 2,000 enemy infantry, supported by machine guns and knee mortar. Marine defensive line held, despite being outnumbered, approximately 50-1. 18 Marines survived engagement. 13 killed. Enemy casualties estimated at 600-800 KIA wire, based on body count and blood trails. Private First Class Anthony Casamento distinguished himself by aggressive use of grenades and rifle fire. Estimated 23 confirmed enemy kills. Recommend for Silver Star. Report made no mention of modified grenades. Made no mention of Saracen cans. Made no mention of shortened fuses. Made no mention of unauthorized ordnance modifications. Official Marine Corps doctrine remained unchanged. Mark II, fragmentation grenade with 4 to 4.5 second fuse was standard issue. But word spread. October 27, 1942. Private Chen approached Casamento. Heard you made grenades from tin cans. Where'd you hear that? Yoshida told me. Said they worked better than Mark I is for night fighting. I used standard grenades, Casamento said. Chen understood. Official story was standard grenades. But soldiers talk. If someone wanted to make similar modifications, Chen said carefully, how would they do it? Casamento looked around. No officers nearby. Hypothetically, he said, you'd need empty Saracen camp. Blasting cap, fuse cord, cut to 4 inches. TNT from damaged grenades. Seal it tight. 2-second fuse means you pull pin, count to 1, throw immediately, no hesitation, or it explodes in your hand. Hypothetically, Chen said. Hypothetically. By November 1st, approximately 30 Marines in 2nd Battalion had made tin can grenades. None asked for authorization. None mentioned it in official reports. They just quietly made them, carried them alongside standard Mark IIs. Used tin cans for close-range night fighting when throwback risk was highest. Used standard Mark IIs for daytime or long-range throws when 4-second fuse was safer. Marine Corps officers knew something had changed. Night combat casualty rates improved. Japanese weren't throwing grenades back as frequently, but officers couldn't figure out why. One maintenance officer noticed increased demand for rations containing ham and lima. Beans, the most hated variety, that usually sat in supply tents uneaten. Suddenly, Marines were requesting them specifically. Maintenance officer asked Supply Sergeant, "Why is everyone suddenly eating ham and motherfuckers?" Supply Sergeant knew but didn't say. Maybe they're hungrier than usual. The real reason, Marines wanted the cans. Thicker steel than other ration cans. Better fragmentation pattern. December 1942. Change without credit. Marine Corps Ordnance Board conducted review of grenade effectiveness based on Guadalcanal after-action reports. Board noted, significant reduction in friendly casualties from grenades thrown back by enemy forces during November 1942. Cause unknown. Board recommended. Investigate reducing mark to fuse length from 4 to 4.5 seconds to 3 to 3.5 seconds to reduce enemy throwback capability while maintaining safe handling margin. Recommendation approved, December 15, 1942. Modified Mark II grenades with 3.5-second fuses entered production January 1943. Official Marine Corps documentation attributed change to analysis of combat effectiveness, data from Guadalcanal operations. Anthony Casamento's name appeared nowhere in the documentation. The enlisted Marine who'd figured out the problem, built the solution, and proved it worked against 23 Japanese infantry in one night wasn't mentioned. Marine Corps took credit for innovation that had originated from Private Hood, violated regulations to stay alive. January 1943. Official recognition. On January 8, 1943, Private First Class Anthony Casamento received Silver Star for actions on October 24 to 25, 1942. Citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against enemy Japanese forces on Guadalcanal. Private Casamento, through expert use of grenades and rifle fire, killed 23 enemy infantry during coordinated night assault, materially contributing to successful defense of Henderson Field." Citation made no mention of how he'd used grenades, made no mention of modifications, made no mention of invention, just expert use. February 1943. Casamento wounded. February 18, 1943. Japanese artillery barrage hit Marine positions near Tassafaronga. Casamento was in forward observation post when 75mm shell exploded 12 yards away. Shrapnel hit his right leg and chest. Medics evacuated him to field hospital. Doctors removed fragments, treated infections, stabilized for transport. He spent 6 weeks in hospital in New Caledonia, then transferred to San Diego Naval Hospital. Combat duty finished. Total time in combat, 117 days. Total confirmed kills, 38-23, from October 24th night, 15 from other engagements. He recovered from wounds, but received medical discharge July 1943. Right leg had permanent nerve damage. Couldn't march long distances. Marine Corps sent him home to Bronx. Post-war, the mechanic who changed grenades. Casamento returned to Bronx, July 1943. He was 21 years old. Got job as mechanic at automotive shop on Webster Avenue. Fixed cars, trucks, anything with an engine. Married Maria Gonzalez, his high school sweetheart, September 1943. Had 4 children between 1945 and 1952. Worked as mechanic for 47 years. Same shop, same neighborhood. When people asked about his limp, he said he'd injured his leg during the war. Didn't elaborate. When people asked about Silver Star, he said he'd been a Marine on Guadalcanal. That was enough. He never mentioned tin can grenades. Never mentioned killing 23 Japanese in one night. Never mentioned modifying military ordnance. Never mentioned that Marine Corps had adopted his innovation without crediting him. 1952. A Marine remembers. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Mitchell, formerly Sergeant Mitchell from Guadalcanal, visited Casamento's shop in Bronx. Mitchell had stayed in Marine Corps after war, served in Korea, was now stationed at Camp Lejeune, visiting family in New York. He walked into shop on Webster Avenue, saw Casamento under a Chevrolet, changing oil. Tony. Casamento. Casamento slid out from under car, looked up. Took him 3 seconds to recognize Mitchell. Sergeant Mitchell. Lieutenant Colonel now. But you can call me Bob. They shook hands. Mitchell looked around shop. You've done well. It's a living. Mitchell got to the point. You know Marine Corps changed grenade fuse timing in 1943. I heard something about that. New Mark IIs have 3.5-second fuses instead of 4.5, supposed to prevent Japanese from throwing them back. Casamento wiped grease from his hands. Makes sense. You know why they made that change. Somebody must have figured out the problem. Yeah, Mitchell said. Someone did. October 24th, 1942. Someone made grenades from Saracen cans with 2-second fuses. Killed 23 Japanese in one night. Proved shorter fuses worked. Casamento didn't respond. Official Marine Corps reports say change came from analysis of combat data. Mitchell continued. But I was there. I know where the idea actually came from. What matters is Marines stopped dying from their own grenades thrown back, Casamento said. Mitchell nodded. You're right. That's what matters. But I wanted you to know, I told story to every young Marine I supervised. Told them about enlisted guy who saw problem, built solution, didn't wait for permission. Made sure they understood innovation comes from people who see problems, not from committees. Did you tell them I violated regulations? I told them you saved lives. Regulations exist to support mission. When regulations prevent accomplishing mission, good Marines find another way. Mitchell left contact information. Said, if Casamento ever needed anything, call. Casamento never called. 1990. Historians discover. Dr. James Harrison, military historian researching Guadalcanal campaign, found references to improvised grenades in declassified maintenance logs from 1942. Logs mentioned increased demand for Saracen cans, blasting caps, and fuse cord among 2nd Battalion Marines, October-November 1942. Also found notation. Disposal of damaged. Mark II grenades interrupted November 1942. TNT filling removed from 47 damaged grenades. Cause unknown. Harrison connected dots. Marines had been removing TNT from damaged grenades, using it for something else. He cross-referenced casualty reports. Found significant drop in Marines killed by thrown-back grenades after November 1942. He interviewed 23 surviving Guadalcanal veterans. 14 mentioned tin can grenades used by some Marines for close-range night fighting. One veteran, Private Chen, now 69 years old, described process. We scraped TNT from duds, packed it into Saracen cans, used short fuses. Called them Casamento grenades after the guy who first made them. Harrison tracked down Casamento through veteran registries. Casamento was 68, still working part-time at same automotive shop. Harrison interviewed him, March 1991. Did you invent modified grenades using Saracen cans? I made some improvised ordnance during combat. Yes. Did Marine Corps adopt your innovation? Marine Corps changed grenade fuse timing in 1943. Whether that was related to anything I did, I don't know. Records show you killed 23 Japanese infantry in one night using these modified grenades. I killed 23 Japanese what weapons? I used, official reports say standard grenades. Harrison understood. Even 48 years later, Casamento wouldn't admit to violating regulations. If I wrote that an enlisted Marine invented a better grenade, proved it in combat, and Marine Corps adopted the design without crediting him, would that be accurate? Casamento was quiet for 19 seconds. Then, that would be one way to interpret the evidence. 1998. Medal of Honor, 56 years late. Congress passed law in 1996 allowing review of World War II combat awards for possible upgrade to Medal of Honor. Review Board examined Silver Star, awarded to Casamento, for actions October 24 to 25, 1942. Board determined. Casamento's actions on Guadalcanal met criteria for Medal of Honor. He single-handedly held defensive position against overwhelming enemy forces. Killed 23 enemy combatants, prevented breakthrough that would have compromised Henderson Field. Board recommended upgrade. August 20, 1998. President Clinton presented Medal of Honor to Anthony Casamento. Casamento was 76 years old. Citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, while serving with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, against enemy Japanese forces on Guadalcanal on October 24 to 25, 1942. Citation mentioned killing 23 enemy infantry. Mentioned holding defensive position alone. Mentioned preventing enemy breakthrough. Did not mention tin can grenades. Did not mention fuse modification. Did not mention innovation that changed how Marines fought. Because officially, that never happened. August 22, 2015. The mechanic who changed war. Anthony Casamento died August 22, 2015, age 93. Obituary in New York Times mentioned Medal of Honor, mentioned Guadalcanal, mentioned 23 confirmed kills in one night, mentioned he'd worked as mechanic in Bronx for 47 years. Did not mention he'd invented a better grenade by shortening fuses and using food cans. Did not mention Marine Corps had adopted his innovation without credit. Did not mention hundreds of Marines survived because of grenades he'd taught others to make. Most people who attended his funeral knew he was Medal of Honor recipient. Fewer knew he'd killed 23 Japanese in one night. Almost nobody knew he'd changed how Marine Corps designed grenades. The tin can that changed everything. Marine Corps Museum, Quantico, Virginia, has display on Guadalcanal campaign. Display includes Mark II grenade with 3.5-second fuse, the modification adopted in 1943. Placard reads, Improved Mark II fragmentation grenade. Introduced January 1943. Featured shortened fuse to prevent enemy throwback. Placard does not mention where idea came from. Does not mention Private First Class who figured it out using Saracen cans in October 1942. Does not mention 23 Japanese killed in one night proving concept worked. Because, officially, Marine Corps Engineering analyzed combat data and determined optimal fuse length. Officially, innovation came from engineers and officers. Not from 20-year-old mechanic from Bronx who couldn't throw right-handed. Not from enlisted Marine who violated regulations because regulations were killing people. Not from someone who saw problem, built solution, and didn't wait for permission. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through official channels. Not through engineering committees. Not through officers analyzing data. Through privates and sergeants who watch their friends die, figure out what's killing them, and fix it with whatever materials they can find. Through people who understand regulations exist to support the mission, and when regulations prevent accomplishing the mission, finding another way. Through soldiers who test solutions on themselves first, knowing if it fails, they'll die. But if they do nothing, they'll die anyway. Marine Corps grenades have 3.5-second fuses today because Anthony Casamento scraped TNT from defective ordnance into a Saracen can in October 1942. Because he cut a fuse to 4 inches when regulations said 4.5-second fuses were mandatory. Because he killed 23 Japanese in one night. Proving shortened fuses prevented throwback. Because Sergeant Mitchell didn't report the violation. Because Captain Morris chose mission over regulations. Because 30 Marines quietly copied the modification and passed knowledge soldier to soldier. Because innovation spreads through whispers, not through memorandums. 1 private, 7 tin can grenades. 23 confirmed kills. October 24, 1942. Anthony Casamento proved that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem is a Sarration can. Some scraped TNT and the courage to violate every regulation if it means your friends might survive. If stories like this remind you why we preserve history, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten heroes who changed war without getting credit. Turn on notifications so you never miss these stories. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Anyone in your family serve on Guadalcanal? Thanks for watching. Thanks for making sure Anthony Casamento doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered. You're helping make that happen. We'll see you in the next story.